Hi thinkers, welcome to ThinkX Academy. In this tutorial we are going to study about annotations in Java. So basically annotations are useful in Java, and even in the enterprise world of Java, annotations is something which is used widely. So it is essential to learn annotations. In this tutorial, we are going to cover built-in annotations, which means that they come with packed within Java. So we do not need to create annotations. We can just use them. And we will discuss some built-in annotations in this video, and we will see how annotations work. So basically, the dictionary meaning of annotation is to provide some note or some summary about something. So, or to provide some additional information. So to provide additional information, there are various things that we can provide additional information about in our code. For example, we can provide additional information about the class. We can provide additional information about the function, the static function. Even if it is static, we can provide additional information about that. Then declaration. So you can see here, this is the public int a equals to 10. This is a basic declaration, and here we can also use annotation, and which will be able to provide some additional information. We can even annotate an annotation also, right? So if there is an annotation, we can provide some information about that annotation also using another annotation. So sort of a nested annotation thing, right? So we will discuss how this additional information is provided to compiler in the first part. So basically, let me show you here. There are some, there is a demo project here, which is in Spring Framework, which is a basically enterprise web development project. So if I will show you this application, you can see there are some annotations. Basically annotations start with a @ symbol, right? So you can see here it is an @ symbol, and this means it is an annotation, and this is also an annotation. So they all are annotations. So you can see in a project, in a enterprise project also, annotations are widely used. You can see there are some more annotations also. So let's get back to our main project, which is this one. So let's consider the first built-in annotation. So basically the first built-in annotation is the @override that we are going to discuss, which is the override annotation. So for that, let's create a class, and let's call this as a superclass, and let's create a void print function, or let's say we will create some, let's say there is a make function, and this function does nothing but it will print hello in the output screen, right? So we have this superclass. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another class, which I will call as the subclass, and basically this subclass extends features from the superclass basic inheritance, right? And now in this subclass, I'm going to create the function, which is the make function. And here also, what I'm going to do, I'm going to print, let's say print world here, right? So you can see here that this subclass, this one here, it extends features from the superclass, and this make function is in both the classes, right? So this make function is inside the superclass and the subclass also. So this is known as method overriding. So basically when we will create an object of the subclass and we will call the make function, it will override the make function in the superclass and it will call the make function of this class, right? So basic method overriding, this is the make function. Now you can see that if this program is in the enterprise level, right? So basically you can say that this whole program is in some production environment, then there will be so many code of lines, and it really becomes difficult for the programmer to understand whether this class is overriding this make function or not. For example, let's say the code contains 500 lines and this superclass lies in the first 10 to 15 lines, and this subclass is created in, let's say, last 400 lines. So in that case, it is very difficult for the programmer to understand which of the functions are actually overriding from the superclass. Right. So in that case, someone can say that, okay, we need to provide some additional information in that case. So why can we not use just the comments? Why can I use just override comment here, that I will write overriding make function from super, right? So why to use annotations if we can actually provide the additional information? We can provide the additional information here in the front of this function, which you can see here, which we have discussed. So if we can use the comments in our program to provide additional information, what is the need of annotations? Now annotations ensure that whatever there is written, whatever the additional information is there, the compiler will give you a warning that if you are following that particular information, additional information or not. For example, in this case, let's say instead of make, the programmer writes here makes, right? So let's say this is a typo error that the programmer has committed here, and you can see in the comment it is writing overriding, let's say just overriding from super. So now the programmer will say that, okay, this is a makes function and it is overriding from the super class, and he by error he writes it makes and makes. So it is clearly not function overriding now, but the comment is saying that you are overriding. So at the run, you can see there are no warnings shown in this program that you are overriding or not, right? So basically this additional information about overriding from superclass is actually just a piece of raw information, and it is not providing any warning to the programmer whether he is ensuring that this information is holding true or not. So instead of this, if the programmer would have chosen at the rate override annotation, right, instead of writing the comment, if the programmer has chosen this annotation, which is override annotation, and basically this annotation is simply a built-in annotation. So you do not need to create your own annotation. It is just pre-built in the Java, so you can directly use it to provide information that the function is overriding from the superclass or not. So now you can see that this makes function is not overriding from the superclass since it has typo error. So now the programmer can see the warnings here. You can see that it is showing a warning that the method makes of type sub must override or implement a superride. So you can see here it shows a red line also that this should or must override, right? So annotations are very useful in these cases when you actually want to provide information and the compiler also knows what information you are trying to provide. So in this case, now the programmer knows that he's making some error because this function is not overriding. So he will check it in the super class, and he will get to know that there is some typo error here, so he will change it. Now you can see there are no errors. So basically this annotation is ensuring that overriding is taking place, right? So this is one of the annotations that we are using. Now let's now annotations are used for variety of different purposes. For in this case, it is basically providing information that you must override. In some cases we use, let's say we use a another inbuilt this is another inbuilt annotation, which is a deprecated annotation. What it does is you can see now it has created a slash mark. You can see in the make function it has cut it. Now deprecated means that the function is now outdated, and so you should not use this, right? It's a way of telling the programmer that this function is deprecated or outdated or out of version, so you should not call this function, right? So it is also a very useful annotation, right? You will see use of this deprecated annotation a lot in Android programming also, which basically shows that the particular function is not supported by some framework or library. Now, similarly, there are more annotations like suppress warnings, and so there are a lot of annotations which you will discover when you will particularly use some enterprise level applications which are built in Spring framework. And I've already shown you this demo here, which is basically a project used. It is a Spring Boot application in a Spring framework. You can see these are also some different annotations, and they basically, you can see that if I hover my mouse on Spring Boot application, let me zoom in. You can see that this is a Spring framework, right? And what it does is it triggers, you can see it triggers some auto configuration and some component scanning, and this is a convenience auto annotation that is equivalent to declaring at the rate configuration, enable auto configuration, and component scan. So you can see its annotations are widely used in enterprise world. So in this tutorial, we have discussed these two annotations, the override and the deprecated annotation. And basically these are applied. For example, you can hover on a particular annotation and you can find out whether for what it is actually used. So now you can see there is some information given here. The first information is at the rate target value equals to constructor, field, method, package, and this. Second one is retention. Retention is basically used to give the retention policy, and basically it shows that the particular annotation can be called in the runtime, right? So while you are running this program, it will be called, and it is actually invoked by the compiler also. So this value can change from runtime to source, and you can see at the rate documented means that it has some documentation, and you can see this documentation that this particular annotation is one that programmers are discouraged from using, typically because it is dangerous or because a particular or better alternative exists. Now the compiler warn when a deprecated program element is used or overridden in non-deprecated code. In the next tutorial, we will see how we can create our own annotations, which is basically user-defined annotations, and we will see how we can actually use them in a program to provide additional information. One important thing is this deprecated annotation, or let's say, let me change it to override at the rate override. So now you can see here, if I hover my mouse here and I read at the documentation, so here you can see that it shows target value equals to method. This target means that this annotation can be only applied to a method, right? So basically this annotation can only be used to provide some additional information only about a function, and it makes sense because only functions do overriding, right? Classes don't do overriding, and similarly declarations don't do overriding. But in case of some other annotations like deprecated, you can see the target is, it can be constructor, it can be a field, it can be a method, package, parameter, and a local variable or type, right? So Target annotation is basically used to target a particular annotation to some to provide information about some functions or classes or anything. So that's all for this tutorial. Thanks for watching.